Hi everyone! It's almost noon here on the West Coast, so we'll be starting soon. I don't know if I can do that. Hi everyone! Welcome! So great to see you! Hello, Chef Gina!
Hi.
It's so great to see you! It's perfect! We're going to shape some croissant dough today. Hi everyone! Excellent. Hi everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to get started in about a minute. Great. Let me make sure I have everything. Oh, I know. It's 12 noon Pacific. Welcome everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Dough Doctor. Please begin to pepper the comment section with your questions. And happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Let us know what you are, let us know what you're baking for Mother's Day, if you are baking, or what your plans are. And if you're a mom, are you gonna put your feet up and relax, or are you going to bake something special and find some baking time for yourself? All right, let's get started. I'm Chef Colette. I am your host and resident baking expert to answer all your questions so that you don't, all your baking questions, so you don't have to waste time on the internet, and we get you back into the kitchen as quickly as possible. All right, great, let's get started. And let me know where you are logging on from. Yes, Patty, there is. We do have a guest today. Chef Gina is with us, and Chef Gina is one of my dearest, she is my dearest friend. She's my bread sister, and oops, she's popped off. But she and I teach together at Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. We also taught together at Le Cordon Bleu College of Culinary Arts. We may have some Le Cordon Bleu graduates here in the audience. And we also taught at the Art Institute of Hollywood. So lots of time teaching baking and pastry in Los Angeles and now online. All right, great. So I'm just checking quick for questions to see if we have any to start with. I mean, I always have questions to start with. Haha, great. No, Patty, you're fine. You are all fine. All right. So here we are, back in the kitchen. And the first question came in about croissants. Now, that's apropos because I have some croissant shaping to show you and maybe inspire you to make a batch of croissants yourself if they're not already in your repertoire, or if they are, maybe go into the kitchen later and whip up a batch of croissant dough. All right, so the question about croissants the question came in about the butter block. One of our bakers wrote in and she said she had an older recipe for croissants, one that was written in the 1980s, I believe, and it called for flour in the butter block. So just to put you in the picture, for those of you who may not have made croissants before, croissants are what we call a laminated dough. When you bite into a croissant and you have all those luscious layers, it's because croissants start out as a dough, and then they have a separate block of butter. And through a series of incorporating the butter, and then 2, rolling out the dough and folding it, we get a beautiful, flaky, laminated dough that we shape however we want, we proof, we bake, and we enjoy. So back in the old days, so why would anyone put flour in a butter block? Well, it was something that was done for years, because up until about 40 years ago, the fat content in butter wasn't regulated as strictly as it is today. So the flour was added to the butter block to absorb excess moisture from the butter. Today, in these modern times, in 2022, since about at least 40 years ago, butter to be sold in the United States and to be sold in Europe, in EU countries, has to be at least 80% butterfat. So with that high, that's a relatively high butterfat content, we no longer have to add flour to our butter blocks to absorb moisture. The problem whenever, and this is just a baking note and separate from croissants, whenever we encase flour in fat, or actually, well, that's a tangent. I'm going to hold off because I'm so good at tangents. But when we encase we add flour to fat, the flour is never going to bake out. The fat molecules are just too tight around it. It's just not going to bake out. So I remember from back in the day that a butter block with flour, I could taste the flour in the butter block. So I'm telling our baker, leave the flour out, just make a beautiful butter block, butter only, and you'll have success right there. No need to add the butter. And BTW, they also sometimes would add a little lemon juice to the croissant dough. Now this is France, and that's very interesting. They did it to cut gluten strands. It's kind of the same principle as adding apple cider vinegar to a pie dough. But we don't have to do that either. All right? If you're interested in a croissant class, I will make a plug for my croissant class on Craftsy, mastering croissants. Oh, what do I call it? Oh, I remember. Classic croissants, modern techniques. I don't know. You'll find it. All right, everyone. Let's see. Where are we? Hi, everybody. Let's see. Are we having any more questions? All right. No, we're good. My goodness. Yes. Croissant class on Craftsy. You'd think I could remember my own class. That's all right. So that's the question that came in about butter blocks. All right. If you know the French name for butter blocks, put it in the chat. All right. Next question came in about cakes that fall. If you've ever had a cake fall, put it in the comments, not the chat. We're on Instagram. We're not on Zoom. Comments, comments, comments. Ever had a cake fall? All right. Couple things can cause your cakes to fall. 9 times out of 10, it's because we check them too soon, and we have to be very quick and organized when we pull a cake out of the oven to check it. That's right, we talk about this on the show all the time. You want to make sure whenever you're checking your baking product that you pull it out of the oven, close the oven door, and then quickly test the product and get it back in the oven. If you either have the oven door open and test your product, like with a skewer or a stick, you all know, because we talk about it all the time, the temperature drops, and that can cause a cake to fall. But it can also be the flour in the recipe. So what you want to do is you want to be mindful when you're looking up recipes on the internet. If you're looking at a cake where the amount of sugar is more than the flour, you want to make sure stating cake flour, good old-fashioned bleached cake flour. If that recipe calls for all-purpose, you might be in a little bit of trouble because bleached cake flour is usually, I actually cannot think of an exception, is our #1 choice for what we call, cakes with more sugar than flour, because the bleaching process helps the flour absorb more sugar as opposed to all-purpose. And also the granule size of the flour helps with the batter, the texture of the batter, and the ingredients incorporating and dissolving efficiently. So if you, again, just be aware, because our natural tendency these days is to go on the internet to look for a recipe. It's like a reflex. But one thing that I really want to stress in the show is I want to give you tools so that you know what to look for, so that when you find a recipe on the internet that you want to try, that recipe and your time in the kitchen and your baking is successful. Because it's fact. The better we bake, the more successful our outcomes, the more we bake, right? All right, so I wanted to talk about that. All right, everyone, I am going to just check. I'm checking for questions. All right, checking. Welcome, everyone. You are right. One of our chefs answered barrage, of course. And then another one of our bakers said barrage. All right, while we're working away, tell me the French name for the dough. If the butter block is called the barrage, what's the dough called? All right, great. All right, everyone, so those were the 2 questions I had to start with. And, I think what I'm going to do, because I don't see any questions, I realize it's kind of a holiday weekend, but with Mother's Day, and I would really love to hear what you're doing or what you're baking, or if you're baking for Mom, what you're planning to bake for her. Remember, you know, we got to take care of our moms and dads. It's really important. I'm going to just sail right into the demo with the croissant dough. All right. So for those of you who make croissants, I want to show you something that can be very helpful. And you might be like, why are you holding up an ice pack? The ice pack helps me keep my dough cold. And so, you know, maybe you camp, maybe you go on picnics, maybe you live in LA and you take picnics to the Hollywood Bowl and you have these hanging around the house or in the freezer. Well, for baking, anytime you need to keep a dough cold, these are very, very useful. I also use them when I'm cooling down, you know, for regular cooking. You need to get something cold fast before you put it in the refrigerator. All right, so I like to point these out because they can be very helpful. All right, so this croissant dough was made Thursday and then frozen overnight, or frozen till this morning, and then I rolled it out and I just folded it up and put it under the ice pack while we were answering questions and chatting. And now I'm going to take it, I'm going to show you. So this dough, which is picked up, this dough is 1/4 inch thick. All right, you can see right there. When we roll out croissant dough, we want to be between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch. If you can, the measurement between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch is 3/16. But we're not going to get all technical. I'm going to show you a hack that I show a lot because I love it so much. I've got my rulers which are a 1/4 inch thick. It's just a yardstick cut in half. That's all it is. And I had this dough. This dough was really perfectly rolled out. But then when I folded it and threw it in the fridge, the gluten strands tightened up again. And now I've got and it's a little bit thicker, so I've got to roll it out again. Since I don't have a dough sheeter in the house, at least not yet, I'm going to use my, I'm going to roll it out by hand. All right. So now we're back to a 1/4 inch. And we need, for shaping, we need our dough just a little bit thinner. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to roll up and back. And then what you want to do is always, and when you're working with pie dough, you want to do this as well, you want to pick it up and drop it and let that gluten spring back a little bit. Okay. Because when gluten is activated, and you guys, you know, anytime we mix a dough, we roll a dough, we are activating gluten. And the gluten, it tightens up. That's what it does. And the only thing to relax it is time. So we're good. All right. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to shape chocolate croissants. I have a 3rd way for down the line, but right now we're just going to cover the basics. All right. And I'm going to cut 4 by 4 inch squares. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 inches. I feel like because, you know, unless you're a baby boomer, you probably didn't get home ec or shop in high school, and that really sort of helped people not really realize measurements. Now this tool is a 5-wheel pastry wheel, and I'm just going to mark it. This is made by a company called Ateco, and it's so cool. There we go. And I'm just going to line it up about 4 by 4, and I'm going to cut without making any noise or having anything drop on the floor. Okay. Now you may be thinking, well, what if I don't have one of these things? If you don't have one of these things, you're just going to take your ruler, you're going to line it up, and you're going to cut 4, 4, 4, and then widthwise and lengthwise. But what's really important with laminated doughs, what we want to do is always trim the sides first. Okay. And I keep the scraps. We have lots of things we can do with the scraps. So 2 ways. You can get yourself a fancy cutter, or you can use your ruler. And then the next thing I do is I stack my squares to keep them cold. All right, let me just check for questions. Make sure we don't, let's see. Oh, we've got somebody, people are joining from all over. And we have a couple chefs in the house, super exciting. All right, so I'm gonna show you croissant, how to fill croissants one way, and then I'm gonna show you another. And you may remember several weeks ago, we tempered chocolate on the show, and I spread the leftover chocolate thin. and let it set up, and then I broke it up and put it in a Ziploc bag. And now I cut this into sticks to fill our croissants. And you could also use chocolate chips, like a line of chocolate chips. All right. Now with our squares, step one, give the squares just a little stretch. You won't hurt the dough. The dough is actually really sturdy, all right? And then we have egg wash, 5-star egg wash, 1 egg with a little bit of salt, whisked until super smooth and strained. That step of straining the egg wash is a game changer. Highly recommend. All right, then I'm just in the lower third of the croissant. I'm gonna put in some chocolate, line of chocolate. I'm right below center, actually, right below center. And then not too full, but not too spare either. Pick up the bottom edge, and we're gonna bring it right to the top, leaving about 1/4 of an inch. And then see the 1/4 of an inch? We're gonna fold over. The seam should be in the center. If it worries you, you can pinch it, but usually the weight of the croissant holds the seam shut. Now I do not have a baking tray set up because I'm gonna freeze these filled, not proofed, for 2 weeks from now, okay? All right, so that was the first way. And then the second way is a little bit more posh. Give the squares just a slight tug. Whoop. That's the tug sound. Whoop. And I'm gonna paint a stripe of egg wash down the center, right down the center of the croissant. And instead of doing 1 line of chocolate, I'm gonna do 2 on either side of the egg wash stripe in the center. Now, full disclosure, for another demo this week, I made about 5 pounds of croissant dough. So I was racking my brain for demo today, and I was thinking of Mother's Day, and I thought, you know, this might be, maybe not for this Mother's Day, but for down the line. You could make croissants for mom or dad for like a special brunch. All right, so we have lines of chocolate, and the center is clear because, and you can even like, all right, clearly you can also buy super posh chocolate batons off of Amazon or kingarthurflour.com, but I don't have that, so I'm just using the chopped chocolate. You're going to bring the bottom edge and bring it up to the center and push down, top edge to the center, and just push down a little bit. All right. See? See? Chocolate. I'm going to finish this one up. These are really nice. These are my favorite because you've got 2 rows of chocolate. They 9 times out of 10, they stay closed. They rarely open up because the seam is right down the center and there's so much weight. And they're pretty and they're posh. So this is my favorite way. But sometimes cost is an issue. So maybe you can't afford, you know, like your bakery, you can't afford all that chocolate. So you have to economize and just do one line of chocolate. But usually at home, we're a little bit more flexible. So I would recommend that one. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap them and I'm going to set them up for freezing, and they will keep for about 2 weeks in the freezer. And then when I want to use them the night before, I will break them out of the freezer and I will set them up on a tray, not for baking, just for thawing in the fridge, covered, of course. And then they'll thaw overnight. You take them out of the freezer the night before you want to bake them. And then the next morning you proof and you bake. That's it. So that's today's demo. Oh, and you might be wondering, are you wondering how do you wrap them? Would you like to see that? How to wrap them? I bet you would. All right. So whenever we wrap any dough, any raw dough, you want to do a 2-layer process. And that is plastic wrap. Oh, a really good point, really good point. You can, before you struggle and wrap them, you can put them on a baking tray. This is a 1/4 sheet pan, a 13 by 9 inch pan. You line them up. This is great. Then if you're someone who likes to throw brunches or have house guests for the weekend, you've got these croissants that you've made with your own hands in the freezer ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick them in the freezer just like this. I'll put a piece of plastic wrap on top. I'm going to set a timer for an hour, and in an hour, maybe 2 hours, tops, they'll be frozen hard enough to wrap and then slide into a Ziploc bag, label and date them, and put them in your refrigerator. Any questions on that? Patty has a question about butter for croissants, so I'll take that question in a second. You want to get these, if you shape your croissants ahead of time, you must get them in the freezer right away, because they will begin to proof. The yeast is going to wake up, it's going to start activating. All right. Okay, so Patty, so the best type of European butter to use, there's several brands that are excellent. So it's a question of what's available in your area. Number one, I would say Plugra. What's kind of nice about Plugra is that it's a European style butter. I feel like it's a European style butter that is made in Iowa. So it's relatively, at least it's local to the United States, as opposed to being a French butter imported and all that, you know, big carbon imprint going from Europe all the way to us. So I really like Plugra. Danish Creamery is very nice. If you live on the West Coast, Challenge European style is excellent. That's also more of a local butter. Anybody watching from the Midwest, Land O'Lakes makes a great European style butter. If you are watching the show from Europe, just really, or other countries, you're probably at a better advantage than us in the States, because I find when I travel that the butter is magical. I wanted to move to Edinburgh when I was there because the butter and the farm stores and the eggs, it was just transformative. So you probably have your favorites. So just to recap, see what's available. maybe try some plus gras, one of the American butters, but they're European style. They're probably cultured, which means they're slightly acidified as opposed to being a sweet cream butter. And then also, yeah, I guess that's about it. I was thinking, did I forget one? No, no. But usually like plus gras, and always get the unsalted ones. Usually plus gras is the one everyone wants to try. All right, great. Let's see. And Patty said, oh, Presidente. Yes, Presidente is also very nice. That's another butter that you find even in like big box grocery warehouse stores. Oftentimes they'll have it says it's president, but it's pronounced Presidente. And that's another really nice one to use. Experiment. You have your notebooks, make your notes on what you like and the flavor profiles, and then go from there. Okay? All right. Let's see. I'm just checking. I really don't have any further questions. That's a great question, Patty. Let's see. Anything else before we wrap up the show for today? Any more questions? All right. I have a DoughDr announcement. Next week, the show will be dark next week because I will be on set for the next 2 weeks. But I will be back in 2 weeks. I believe that's Saturday, the 21st. And we'll be back with another show. Feel free in the interim to send me your questions, and I'll just collect them and answer them all on the 21st. So I cannot thank you enough for joining me today. Have a happy Mother's Day. I hope where you are, it is a beautiful weekend in May. We made it, everyone. It's spring. And yeah, don't be strangers. If you have questions, please send them. And I guess that's it. So thank you so much, everyone. And remember, if you want a croissant class, check out my croissant class on Craftsy. All right. Thanks, you guys. Happy Mother's Day.